that he was an active conscious hip hop artist in Texas for a number of years, and yeah, he's probably still out there. So we're gonna go to some more music.
Who are we gonna hear?
Right now, we're gonna jam some "So Soon the Truth." It's Derrick and Micah here for another episode of Freethinker Radio. Just to let you know, today we're gonna be covering uncensored stories that you didn't hear, more than likely, in 2018 and 2018. We get into lots of uncensored stories as well as our usual topics. We're also taking your phone calls at 713-526-8737.
That sounds good.
And let's go to some music, and we'll be right back. And we're also live on YouTube at The Conscious Resistance for anybody else who wants to watch live.
Yeah, get more people to watch live, join in the dialogue. We love the chat. I think it's really great when people comment, talk about the stories, what they remember about it, what they saw propaganda about it. What other things might people have to say about the stories? Propaganda they saw about it, what they remember about it, the effects, different things that news analysis, I think, is what we do a lot of on this show. Sometimes we have some firsthand broadcast news reporting, but we do a lot of news analysis, and it's really important that people do that in this day and age because journalists aren't doing as much journalism, and in the lack of that, you need to analyze what you read, what you take in.
And the journalists that do journalism get fired. We're going to find out more about that. We're going to talk about Syria's OPC whistleblower ongoing scandal, as well as many other things that you're not going to hear in the mainstream Deadstream story, and music that you won't hear on any other FM station, whether in Houston or elsewhere. So right now we're going to go to Houston's So Soon the Truth. Were you ever really there? Check this out. We'll be right back. What's up, guys? We're live here now. You can listen in on kpft.org/listen, or you can watch here. We're going to turn the music up. You can hear the music we're jamming.
Or you can do both. You can watch here and have the kpft.org be the sound in the background.
And share this out. Share this out with your friends. Thumbs up, like, subscribe, all that good stuff, guys.
Because we're trying to reach people.
We'll be right back.
To the ground, hollow his name. He should never cast you out. Call the same place as if there was a doubt. You find myself happy from everything. You face the
Did you share the YouTube link on the page yet? Start checking it out. Maybe we'll get more viewers this time.
How many watts is the station?
100,000 watts of power.
100,000 watts.
Right, that's what I'm gonna. Well, HD, that's that.
All right. Welcome back to Free Thinker Radio. My name is Derrick Bros, and I'm here with Micah Jackson.
Hey.
This is another week of Free Thinker Radio, bringing you uncensored news beyond the mainstream. We're bringing underground music. That we just played Jay Soley, who is a conscious hip hop artist. Then we played So Soon the Truth. They just put out a new album. It just dropped this past Friday on not Black Friday, Friday the 13th. And yeah, so lots of cool music. And if you have music suggestions, whether you're listening live or watching live, you can let us know. Call in at 713-526-8737 if you want to share some music, you want to comment on any of the stories that we're going to be going over for the next 2 hours. This is our Monday show where we have 2 hours to dissect the news and bring you information that you're not going to find elsewhere. And we also have our Friday show, which airs on the FM side for 1 hour. So all that you can find out more at Freethinker Radio if you're on Facebook, if you're still there. And we're going to be turning the HoustonFreethinkers.com into the home for all the information you need for Freethinker Radio. So yeah, you can get plugged in lots of ways.
One of the things we like to do is, I don't know, not just advocate freedom, but give away free stuff. And we have some tickets for Friday night at the Rec Room in Houston. If you do want these tickets, call in 713-526-8737. A guest of ours, Jonathan, comedian, is hosting this with Comedy Hub Houston. And this is Friday at 8 p.m. downtown Houston. So I'll probably mention it a few more times, but yeah, we've been doing pretty good over on the FM side, giving away tickets.
Free tickets to a comedy show?
Yep, this is the drinking game show. So it ought to be fun. I don't know much about this one. He did talk about it. This is their 6th episode, and basically they have to they can defend their beer pong titles, getting heckled by comedians and the audience, a referee. It's kind of interactive from what I remember him telling us about it, and what was I going to say? It's at the Rec Room over at 100 Jackson Street, right across from Minute Maid Park downtown. So if you don't have something to do on Friday, if you haven't done something different other than maybe go to a show or go to a museum or go to the park, here's a chance to go to a comedy interactive. Sounds like you don't even have to interact, but a comedy show in the Rec Room Theater. If you haven't been to the Rec Room, it's a chance to go to that, and a chance not to pay any money for the benefit of that. So sweet. I guess if you shout out on the YouTube, if you want those, if you're in Houston, we've got a couple of pairs of those, or call in at 713-526-8737. So what else is going on in Houston? I got one other event.
Well, I want to say one more thing on the whole ticket giveaway for those, because I know that, again, we're live on YouTube via the Conscious Resistance channel. We've got people saying hello from New Zealand, from Sweden, from Seattle, from the East Coast, Canada. So listeners and folks from all over. So even if you're not listening from Houston and a comedy show based in Houston isn't going to do you much good, one of the things we are working on is working with businesses and entrepreneurs and individuals who have art or experiences or tickets and things that they would like to share with people and use our platform to give those away. And that could be, say, for example, we're working with the folks from the Envision Festival to get some tickets to give away here on KPFT very soon. And that's a conscious transformational festival that takes place in Costa Rica. So that's not even based in Houston. And
we gave away tickets to a Drunken Rock Fest open air that got rained on. So we're not just limited to conscious ones. I'm just saying you could get some unconscious.
My point is that
tickets.
if you want some unconscious events, my point is that even if you're listening from Houston or not, outside of Houston, you're like, oh, that doesn't apply to me. Something will apply to you soon. We're working on that. We're working on getting the events and things that you can connect with, and get involved in. So yeah.
Yeah, but being rooted in Houston, we often do speak about Houston events. We like to speak about events beyond Houston for sure as they come up. But sometimes we also think that, just letting people know that things are going on in the world and exciting life, to get out and discover stuff, go to a magic show. I don't know what.
Take inspiration from what's going on in other cities, right? So if you're listening outside of Houston and you're like, whoa, that sounds really cool. That's going on in Houston. Maybe you're the one that's going to bring it to your community. Whatever that may be. But all right, Micah, what other events you got?
Well, I got one other event that I wanted to make sure I mentioned. And that was, remember we had that call in from Electric Van, and their show is coming up December 19th. They called into the FM show, mentioned they have a concert here in Last Concert Cafe, and it's going on Thursday night. Sometimes weeknights are a little tough. And they did say that we could give away a pair of tickets. So if you want to get out to a music show, hit us up for that one. We could give away a pair of tickets for that as well. So I'm excited about having these opportunities. And of course, I'm happy to show love to all the music that we enjoy. Yeah,
absolutely. What did you get anything special this weekend? Any exciting
I got
activities?
out of town and it was all special, but I can't talk about it on the radio.
Cool, good to hear that. I went out for a little bit. I actually spent about 5 hours on my bike just riding around the city. I
did go metal detecting. Sorry,
did you?
Yeah, that was pretty cool and different.
Fun.
I hadn't done it before. They had a really high caliber metal detector, so it was fun. Sorry. So you got out and rode the bike?
Oh, I rode my bike around, but particularly on Saturday, I noticed there was just, it's always busy in Houston, but there was a half dozen or more farmers markets, community markets, just social events. And I wanted to go check on some stuff because I'm trying to find, I was looking for a candle, but I wanted to find a local candle. And I was also looking for maybe some gifts. And I'm also recently trying to limit my use of my cell phone. I have a cell phone, but I use it for Wi-Fi. It's not connected to any service at the moment. So I'm just trying to unplug a little bit. And I did something I hadn't done in a while. And I pulled out a piece of paper and I wrote down the addresses, the places I was going. And I mapped out, okay, how can I do this without a phone in my pocket, not bringing a phone with me at all?
Did you do this to be weird?
No, just because I wanted to just totally be on my bike and in there in that experience. So yeah, I mapped out these 6 different farmers markets, and I was down in Kirby, I was down in the downtown area, it was in Montrose, it was at 2 different places in the Heights over off Washington.
Can you describe what a lived experience like that is like for people that are just on a phone, like, and would never write a note? I mean, talk to me a moment about the difference real quick.
I feel like I forgot how to write with my own hand. I spent so much time writing and typing on computers and on laptop that when I told you earlier too, I've started journaling recently, and I was also writing down directions and things like this, and I was like, wait, my hand doesn't know what to do. It's starting to cramp after like 5 minutes. Like, this is not good. And it just made me feel like, I want to get back in tune with writing and whatnot.
Nice.
But it was a cool experience just riding all around the city. It was a beautiful day. Got to visit a bunch of individual kind of local markets and go through there, picked up some art, picked up that candle I was looking for.
You got the candle.
I got some awesome tea, locally made tea that is really good, herbal tea. So that was cool. I had a good day. But Nice. And anyways, that's what was going on this weekend. Let's get into some news. I know there's a lot of important things. The election was this weekend, Mike. I don't know if you saw.
I haven't seen anything.
Well, Mayor Turner is still going to be Mayor Turner going into 2020.
For some reason, I'm not too surprised.
Tony Busby lost to Sylvester Turner. So those of you who've been following, whether from Houston or elsewhere, you've seen that we've kept up with what's going on with Mayor Turner way before I entered the mayoral race. We were talking about his involvement with the telecom industry and 5G, Verizon and Microsoft. We were talking about homeless feeding ordinance, about the way that he and the police department handled the Tuttle raid, the killing of Houstonians, and a number of different situations related to this man. And he won, and he will be the next mayor of Houston again for the next 4 years. And most of the incumbents were reelected. I didn't see anybody. I mean, there's definitely some changes. I read that right now there's more
District
women.
H was 50% to 50%.
Yeah, I saw that. I read that now there's more women on city council than there ever has been in Houston's history. I don't know if that'll make a difference, but it was kind of, people were taking note of that historical moment. And of the different people that I met while running for city council, I will say one person who I think probably will be a good guy. I don't know if that means we're going to agree on everything. Edward Pollard, I think he did win one of the seats. He was in the runoff, and he's in his mid to late 30s. He was like he's been involved in the community, started a bunch of nonprofits. I think he's a lawyer, but then he came back to Houston and has been involved doing a lot of cool things. And I got to meet and talk with him throughout the campaign, and he was supportive of what I was doing, and I think he might have taken a seat. I could be wrong, but either way, as far as local politics go, the other thing, I mean, Micah, the numbers of voters went down from, and this was expected, this is kind of typical, but you had, I think, 250,000 people voting during the general election on November 5th, which I was a part of. And now the runoff was this weekend, and the runoff, there was 204,000, I think, total people. So the number of voters went down, and that number already is only 1/5 of the registered voters, which itself is only 1/3 of the people, 1/3, maybe 1/4, depending on how many people are actually in Houston, the amount of people that are actually in the city. So only 1/3 to 1/4 of the people register to vote in the city, and then only 1/5 of those people decide to go get involved. And
then half of those choose the
and half
victor.
choose one side, and that
At least
person
half, right?
gets, yeah, you have to get 51%, to win the first time, but nobody does that. So then you get to the second round and it ends up split between two people. So I think it's just interesting because when we talk about politics, and we were talking about this while I was running, and it was kind of like, okay, well, does that mean that if I was to win, that I would reject it because it only represents such a small portion of the people? Or would you say, you know what, no, well, I'll just take the votes of the people who decide to get active and try to still do something good for everybody, right? I think that's what everybody thinks that comes in that position. They think that they're doing some good for the people, right? They're like, okay, well, I know what's best. I even saw the mayor, and he's like, I guess he's like, it's clear the voters trust me, and they trust me to continue on the path that I've been on, and this and that kind of talk. And it's interesting to me because
so just barely over 100,000 people chose who would be mayor of Houston.
100,000 people out of a city of 3.4 million people. Just crazy. I mean, and to me, it really is. It's not just the failure of, oh, this is why we need more people involved. I think generally you do want people involved in some ways because, getting involved doesn't necessarily have to mean going and voting or running for office and those kinds of things. That's what a lot of people believe. There's a lot of different modes of action that can be moving towards your goals, whatever they may be, and engaging with the world around you that don't have to be dependent on that political system.
One thing we talked about Friday was the District B race.
Yeah, so that District B race was not on the ballot. I saw it might be pushed all the way to March even. And like I think I talked about last week on this show and on Friday, there was another legal challenge to the mayoral race, but the judges put that off and probably won't go anywhere. Long story short, without getting lost in the weeds of it, there's a lot of screwiness is the best way, the best FCC compliant way I can think of to say it at the moment, going on in local politics. And that's the more disturbing part.
And the media seems complicit.
There's 100,000 people who are voting for the mayor, and there's only 200,000 people who are voting. And there's probably a couple more 100,000 who pay attention but still don't participate. So let's say maybe 500,000 people will even bother to even kind of casually pay attention to that's still such a small percentage of the city. And because of that low attention and the complicity that Micah just mentioned of the media, because I realized the local media, Fox 26 and some of the others, definitely are part of keeping a filter bubble and keeping certain information from reaching the people.
I think a lot of people realize it on the national level, but when you see like the whole process on the micro level, it just shows you how it works in a whole different, like, obviously it's very much the same thing. It's like micro macro. They limit who gets to be on. They say these are the candidates and make it as if they're the only options.
Well, yeah, and so the media and the local political game, they work together. And because such a small amount of people are paying attention, it's very easy to get away with all kinds of stuff. And the media is not doing their job and telling people, hey, look, this is something you should be concerned about. Or, because some of the local politics, they're not just easily explainable. It's like you have to be able to dissect them. And so that, I think, is supposed to be the job of a journalist, to go out and to take, especially in the data-driven world we live in now, is like take information, take data, turn that into a story that people can understand and understand why it relates to them and why they might be concerned about it or should care at all. The local media really isn't doing that. The reporting that was taking place on the city election was just focused on the couple of candidates they wanted people to pay attention to. And overall, my point here is that so you had such a small amount of people paying attention, and it's not that they're choosing to say, hey, screw the political system, let's go get involved other ways. If they are doing things, maybe there's a lot of volunteering going on, there's donating, there's things like that. But the politicians are still getting away with doing whatever the heck they want. So it's not like you have people opting out of the system but protesting en masse or civil disobedience or mass non-compliance or something like that, where you could say, hey, well, even though they're not voting, they're doing this. For me personally, even as somebody who ran for office, I don't think voting is the most effective way to measure your self-worth and your action. That I think there's bigger ways to do that. But either way, we're in a situation where people aren't paying attention, they're not voting, and they're not necessarily doing something else, at least real clear and real obvious to oppose the power to build something better. So instead, we're living in a situation where there's 4 million people and not many people paying attention.
Sounds like Houston.
Yeah, Houston. But there's also a lot of good people out there doing good things. I will say that, for every person out there being apathetic, there's somebody else trying to work on a solution.
And you saw that in the campaign.
Yeah, I definitely did meet good people who care about issues and are working in a variety of ways. The problem I've noticed over the years, at least one of the problems I might point to, is that people seem to be drawn towards more of the drama or you watch the train wreck, but people aren't as much in a hurry to go learn how to grow their own food or things like that. It's just, it seems like they're more interested in reading about like how bad things could be as opposed to taking time to learn how good things could be if we took action. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah, I think, obviously you met the nice people that got involved with the campaign, but just even I was thinking about like the town halls where people would go to them and maybe they didn't support your campaign or they weren't there with it or whatever you want to say, but those people were trying to hear something. They were trying to hear what the powers or whatever, the people who may be deciding, that making decisions that affect us all, like 5G and fluoride and surveillance and, the list goes on. Potholes.
Yeah, we got to find ways to get people more involved. And just I want to throw this idea out there because I don't know if I've said this on the show or on the YouTube channel or not, but for those who were aware of my mayoral campaign, or even if you weren't involved, but maybe you, like Micah said, from a distance, thought, okay, I appreciate that. And we definitely had some of that where maybe they didn't vote for me in the end or even bother voting at all, but people said, hey, we're thankful you're out there doing that. We are kind of pushing out, we being the people who I was working with the campaign, the various volunteers, we're moving it into the next phase of things going into 2020 for those who are in Houston or mainly Houston, but definitely if you want to be involved in some way from elsewhere, we can make something happen. Where instead of the action being oriented around, let's get Derrick Rose elected, now that moment has passed, shifting towards, well, how can we still talk about these issues that were raised in the campaign and get people active? And so we're calling it Imagine a New Houston. There's going to be a new website being launched January 1st, 2020. Just imagineanewhouston.com. That'll be a place where people in the Houston area can go read up and learn about the concerns about 5G or learn about the situation involving the homeless or learn about the privacy or learn about, community gardening and the importance of that, but also plug in to say, hey, here's an upcoming event on that particular issue. So take the different 9, 10, or 12 issues that I was raising in the campaign and have a site that can be a focal point for gathering people together and taking on these different issues and getting engaged in that way. So, I from the very beginning when I was launching this campaign, not to get too much into this, sorry to go on this tangent, but I just think it's important to mention that when I started the campaign, I realized like looking at other campaigns, let's say Ron Paul's presidential campaign or Bernie Sanders' political campaign, presidential campaign, you see lots of people getting pumped up and excited about somebody who they think can change things, and they donate money, time, energy. They tell everybody they know. They promote on social media.
I feel like it's like they finally they identify with all the ideas, right?
Sure.
And someone's actually articulating the ideas that seems to them credible enough to perhaps stand office where they might not see themselves as having that sort of inclination or whatever. So I think some people get in a tribe mentality, and then some people, and maybe that's more the lamestream politicians, but I think some people that perhaps, like you said, support any of the candidates that you named, these what might be termed by the lamestream as fringe candidates. I think it's because they're like actually supporting them. I think their people are for them more often, whether it's Bernie Sanders or your supporters or Ron Paul's. These what do you call them? Grassroots. I don't know what else you could call them. Fringe, non-lamestream candidates. But yeah, I didn't mean to throw that out there, but I wanted to because I think it's important, because I think on those type of candidates, you don't just have this pure cult of personality. Obviously, there's some personality going on in there, but it's not as, I feel like it's not as malfeasant, negative as, or as insidious as perhaps an Obama, Trump, Bush, Clinton level thing. I think that often people supporting these type of candidates don't have other candidates that they support.
Yeah, I agree. And so the point I'm getting at with this, whether you're talking Bernie Sanders, fringe, like you said, kind of outside the mainstream candidates, or any candidate really, even let's say Obama. But
Okay.
with the situation I'm getting at is the fact that people put their hope into a candidate, and if that person gets elected, they've achieved their goal. And sometimes I feel like, okay, they achieved their goal. That person got elected now, and maybe you move on to the next phase of, you're part of that team. Or maybe that's just, you built up all this energy, you achieved your goal, and then, okay, we did that. Now that person can go on and be in office and they'll fix everything. Or you work hard,
Progress.
you got a campaign, then he doesn't achieve the goal. Somebody doesn't, get into office, say Ron Paul again, Bernie Sanders. And in those cases, they created organizations. Bernie Sanders created Our Revolution. Ron Paul created Campaign for Liberty. And it's kind of like let's create an organization to filter the ideas and keep this momentum going. Not to say that's not a good strategy or anything, but what my thought process was, how do you capture that momentum of people who are getting engaged? And we definitely saw that with the campaign. We saw people who were coming out every day and just coming out and passing out flyers and excited about it. And so to me, it was like, okay, I want to make sure that, for one, we don't ever, it's not the last time we see each other, or that, that the working together ends here now that the campaign's over, or, you know what I mean? That sort of thing, where there's still action and movement. And so out of that thoughts, this whole Imagine a New Houston idea has kind of come about. Like, let's take the momentum of people who, even if I, got less than 1,000 votes in the city of Houston, we saw that we were reaching tens and thousands of people throughout the Facebook page, with the ideas and throughout the campaign. So people obviously care about these ideas in Houston and elsewhere. So I want to keep connecting to them. So if you care about 5G and you live in the city of Houston, Imagine a New Houston will help you plug into activists who are kind of working on these ideas. And in a lot of ways, it's sort of a distillation of what we were doing with the Houston Freethinkers, but maybe in a more neutral kind of way. And they, through focused on the issue that they care about. And so, yeah, we want to make sure that, so to go into that for too long, but just wanted to make clear, because this is, again, a Houston oriented show. But even if you're not in Houston, go start in New Zealand, Imagine, and go out there and get engaged, get to with people.
That's yours, right? And
time for some music, Micah.
I think so too.
When we get back, I want to tell you guys a short story about, I got to speak this morning at a school with some kids, and I think it kind of goes into everything that me and Micah have just been touching on here, the importance of these ideas and having these conversations. This show covers news, and we're going to get into the news. Trust me, we got a lot to talk about. We're covering censored stories from 2018, 2019, but sometimes it's also
all over the world. In fact, we like to play a lot of music that we discover, whether we go to a show or a friend gives it to us, or sometimes it gets sent in a mailbox. And one of these is Roses of the West that we got sent. Kind of spinning it. Some of it's really kind of interesting synth pop. And in that same vein, we're going to get into some local kind of pop that we have here in Houston, Jeremy Carswell. And then we'll be back with more news. So I hope you all enjoy this, and talk to you soon.
Be right back. Hey, I know it was buffering, guys, but hopefully it's all right. Maybe it's like, it looks clear here, but
If I'm lying, like leaving that.
Where you from, the places you know, just somewhere we don't
This is why I think the one thing is like it's best to do these live shows. It's hardwired. It's like on one side. It's like sometimes I do this, sometimes I do this.
Yeah.
Somebody's asking me for songs.
Rose of the West. Rose of the I like it. Still dragon. I can't tell them that it's Rose of the West. More there than
Rose of the West. What?
yeah, the name of the act is Rose of the West, the name of the song is Rose. Hey, wow, you got the line. I want to write yeah, you do. It's still going. I got another one lined up right there.
Oh, where do we go? Where do we go? Away from the places we know to somewhere we don't. Away from the places we know to somewhere.
One more song.
Oh, I wish that was called. Which way? I like that. Sorry, I didn't get what you were saying. I got distracted. I didn't even answer that. Yeah, me too. Maybe I'll go there.
See the love inside your eyes. These are signs just to be here tonight.
Dance all night.
Just to be here, just to be free, just to be
Just to be free.
All right. Welcome back to Freethinker Radio.
They never left. Welcome back to us. We never left either. But we're here now, and we're happy to talk about stuff. You want to get in that one story?
Let them know what we just heard right now.
Well, we did hear Rose of the West. That was out of the desert in Western Australia. Their song Roads, you can find that out if you can Google Rose of the West. Or
Wait,
just
you said
do any-
that band is from Australia?
That band is from Australia.
I think we have some people listening from Australia.
Nice. Yeah, we were really excited to get their CD because I had not seen a CD from another country come to us before, and we had email requests from a rapper in Australia that we've played before, but I don't know. I played this one over the weekend, and a few got it beyond the first couple of songs into some of the other ones, and always want to share the music we like, so it made it into that category. Thank you, Rose of the West, and now we're sharing it with you. And knowing that y'all like it, we'll probably make it over to the FM side. And then we played Jeremy Carswell, who has a immense body of work out there on Bandcamp, and that's from actually his first album. It's really, really well done album.
Dance All Night.
Yeah, that whole album is tremendous. So we love to share the music, and we love to engage in the ideas. So thank you for engaging us and asking us who we're playing.
Yeah, and the cool thing about having this radio show both here on the HD2 dial, which is online, anyone can listen anywhere, and on the FM dial all across Houston, the broader Houston area, is that we get to do radio the way that we like radio and the way we think radio should be, where, like Micah said, covering stories that we know you're not going to hear elsewhere, playing music that we know you're not going to hear elsewhere, and not just playing from that same playlist that has been approved by Comcast or whoever is in charge of music these days.
Whoever accepted enough money from the record labels to play it.
But all right, so I think unless you got a couple stories to get into before we get into the big one,
I think we should just get into that one. I mean,
it's going to take a little while. I think.
Yeah, that way we've got. I'm not trying to say there's not oppression and all kinds of horrible stuff going on, right? But I don't see my normal trending stuff that I can get into. Having a lot of new stuff, which might be a good thing. So yeah, let's get into this one, and then I'm sure we got more than enough to fill.
Okay, so we're looking at, in case anybody wants to follow along, it's from projectcensored.org, excuse me. And Project Censored has been around since the 70s. It's a nonprofit that since 1976. And they started in 1976 with their top 25 censored stories of the year, which was originated by Professor Carl Jensen and his Sonoma State University students in 1976. And now they do it every year. And it says they have Project Censored reviews over 300 validated independent news stories representing the collective efforts of 283 college students and 24 professors from 15 college and university campuses that participate in their affiliate program. And so basically they have several student researchers looking up what they think are censored stories or things that they didn't find elsewhere, and put together an article about it, and it links to relevant information. And so Project Censored has top 25 censored stories from 2018 to 2019. And we're going to just read through all of them, at least the headlines, and maybe a little bit deeper into some of them. Some probably I've heard, but especially if you follow the Conscious Resistance or the Freethinker Radio, you've heard these things, but they're not going to be in the mainstream. But others are things that were new to me and that I hadn't previously heard. So hopefully this is informative for all of us. And again, if you at any point want to call in, whether you're watching live on YouTube or listening online, you can call in.
If you call in, you'll be in the show on YouTube.
Yeah, if you're watching on YouTube, you can call in and then everybody will hear your voice if you want to do that. 713-526-8737 at any point. 713-526-8737. So
yeah, let's get into it.
You want to get into it? All right, you got it open there. Top 25.
Professor Carl Jensen.
Yeah, so that's Carl Jensen, the one who's putting it together. Well, I'll just go one and you go the next, and we'll
Sounds
just go
good.
through it. So number one, Justice Department's secret FISA rules for targeting journalists. I'm going to read at least a paragraph out of that one.
We went backwards. That's the number one most. We should count down. Too late now.
Is it the other way? I think it's either. I don't know if they put them in any specific order.
Okay, cool.
But it says here, so again, Justice Department's secret FISA rules for targeting journalists. And I have read about this. I don't know if we ever did a video or talked about it here, but it says a pair of 2015 memos from former Attorney General Eric Holder to the Department of Justice's National Security Division show how the government can use court orders under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, the FISA Act, or the FISA courts, which themselves, if there's a deep state out there, the FISA court is it secret courts with secret judges, and nobody knows what's going on there. But that the government could use the FISA court to monitor the communications of journalists and news organizations. Seems like that's supposed to be one of those very protected freedoms in land of the free. The Knight First Amendment Institute at Columbia University and the Freedom of the Press Foundation obtained the documents through a FOIA request and a lawsuit challenging the lack of disclosure. And it goes into more details about what the FISA is, if you've never heard of it, and talks about some of the concerning questions, 3 main concerning questions. First, how many times have FISA court orders been used to target journalists, and are any journalists currently under investigation? Second, why did the Justice Department keep these rules secret when it updated its media guidelines in 2015? And third, is the Justice Department using FISA court orders to get around stricter media guidelines? So really some interesting implications here. And this was going on under the Obama administration. It says, as was reported by the Intercept in January 2015, after the Obama administration secretly seized phone records from the Associated Press and named a Fox News reporter as a co-conspirator in a leak case. So this has been going on, I imagine, under the Bush administration as well. And don't fool yourself and think that it somehow stopped under the Trump administration. So that's number one. Justice Department's secret FISA rules are targeting journalists.
Wow, that's pretty serious stuff. We'll watch for people's comments on this in case they remember this or heard anybody talking about it, or have any input on it, because we like to have an engaged show. Okay, so the next one we got here is I like this one. This is good. Some of these things, why didn't I hear more about them? But we did talk a little bit about this one, I think. Think tank partnerships establish Facebook as tool of U.S. foreign policy under the guise of fighting fake news and protecting U.S. democracy from foreign influence. In 2018, social media giant Facebook, where you can follow Freethinker Radio, established partnerships with Atlantic Council, a NATO-sponsored think tank, and with 2 U.S. government creations from the Cold War era, the National Democratic Institute and the International Republican Institute. As a number of independent news organizations reported, despite lofty rhetoric about safeguarding Western democracies, these partnerships have resulted in what amounts to state censorship, with Facebook serving as a tool of U.S. policy. On May 17, 2018, Facebook announced that it would join forces with the Atlantic Council.
Oh, the Atlantic Council.
In order to identify emerging threats and disinformation campaigns around the world and to, quote, fight abuse on our platform.
I'm glad Facebook cares so much about us.
Yeah. According to Facebook's Director of Global Politics and Government Outreach, Katie Harbath, the partnership with the Atlantic Council's Digital Forensics Research Lab would, quote, increase the number of eyes and ears, see something, say something, we have working to spot potential abuse on our service, enabling us to more effectively identify gaps in our systems, preempt obstacles, and ensure that Facebook plays a positive role during elections all around the world. As Jack Johnson reported for Common Dreams, while Facebook's statement fawned over the Atlantic Council's stellar reputation, critics argued that the organization's reliance on donations from foreign oil monarchies and American plutocrats puts the lie on the project's stated mission of shielding the democratic process from manipulating and abuse. The Atlantic Council is a Washington, D.C. think tank funded by the U.S. Department of State, the U.S. Army, Navy, and Air Force, and major multinational corporations. How you like that? These are all working together. This is the military-industrial complex, including Chevron, ExxonMobil, Royal Dutch Shell, global asset management firms, and banks, and top military contractors. According to a 2014 New York Times article, between 2008 and 2013, at least 25 countries donated tens of millions of dollars to the Atlantic Council. Its conservative-leaning board of directors includes former CIA directors, retired U.S. generals, and hawkish former State Department officials like Henry Kissinger and Condoleezza Rice. In May 2018's article, Fair Adam Johnson noted that although there is some diversity of opinion within the Atlantic Council, it is within a very limited pro-Western ideological framework, a framework that debates how much and where U.S. military and soft power influence should be wielded, not if it should in the first place. As Johnson wrote, it is troubling that Facebook would rely on advice from an organization that has advocated on behalf of Turkish dictator Recep Erdogan and one of its previous funders, which presented former President George W. Bush, who was directly responsible for, quote, the illegal invasion of Iraq that killed between 500,000 and 1 million people, a distinguished international leadership award. In the name of fighting the scourge of fake news, Facebook altered its proprietary algorithms in a way that significantly reduced traffic to progressive websites such as Common Dreams and Slate. Without formal warning, Facebook shut down left-wing Venezuela-linked Facebook pages such as Telesur, English and Venezuelan Analysis, although both were reinstituted after protests about their removal. That's interesting. In October 2018, numerous independent news outlets reported on what Jonathan Segerst, how do you say that one, Segerst, writing for the Global Research, described as one of the greatest Facebook account and page purges in the platform's troubled history.
That's what we call the purge. That's what led to the Independent Media Summit in Houston and plenty of other things. That was the day that they deleted the anti-media.
559 pages and 251 accounts were instantly removed in the name of fighting fake news and, quote, Russian propaganda. Many of the pages and accounts that Facebook took down, Segerst wrote, were political, often leftist, anti-war, independent journalists and media outlets that had been targeted in 2016 by Prop or Not, the website endorsed by the Washington Post, but subsequently discredited. In September 2018, Fair's Alan McLeod detailed how Facebook planned to join forces with two propaganda organizations founded and funded by the U.S. government, the National Democratic Institute and the International Republican Institute, allegedly in an effort to combat fake news.
Yeah, I do think I'm glad that they put that on their list because one thing I will say, and it wasn't just everybody understands and remembers that situation differently, right? The sites that tend to lean left, they typically talk about how it was an attack on left-wing media. The sites who might be a little more conservative, they do the same thing for their side. And those who might not really fall on either side are just kind of help people understand that it was people across the board who were anti-war, there was a lot of police accountability websites that were shut down, but definitely anti-war pages.
Because you could be like, I mean, I don't think anybody falls into categories easily, usually not in our audience, but I think somebody could be construed as being left or right and be anti-war. Either way.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I'm saying. So there's anti-war people. There's folks that are generally kind of anti-establishment,
same thing, right?
And they their solutions though might be left-leaning or they might be right-leaning. But at the end of the day, all those groups
are not approved.
Were censored because of calling out similar things. And again, we kind of diverge on solutions, but many of us could see, hey, this is wrong. And so, that story is all about I was actually just thinking about this yesterday. Like, what is the name of this? The military media industrial complex or something like that? Because this is what it literally is. We already have Facebook, which we go back to the beginning of Facebook's seed money and the In-Q-Tel, which is the CIA's venture firm. They helped seed the beginning of Facebook. They had something else called LifeLog that resembles very much what Facebook looks like today. And so you have that, but now they're directly working with groups like Atlantic Council who get funding from the US government and from the NATO governments. And they announced that in May. By October, there's a purge. And here we are a year later. And, look at the difference in social media and Facebook. And how, as in some of these stories we're talking about, and including getting into the Syria whistleblower that we're going to talk about in a little bit, those stories are suppressed on social media. So you delete big major pages that can help spark and spread things and make them go viral. And then you control the narratives and you basically delete anything that that doesn't fit the popular opinion.
Yeah, and then in the corporate news, you don't really get coverage of Facebook's partnership with U.S. government propaganda organizations. It's not like they're out there telling you about it on the mainstream media, right? So nobody knows about it. And Facebook, meanwhile, while that is happening, they're partnering with these establishment news organizations, the very ones that aren't reporting what they're doing, in efforts to discredit independent news outlets. See what's happening here? And ban their social media pages. So yeah, they got each other's back, basically. Mainstream media and the social media giants.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
It's media control is what it's about, controlling that narrative. In February 2019, CNN published a report on Facebook's decision to ban the, quote, In the Now video channel and 3 of its offshoots, Soapbox, Back Then, and Wasted, each of which is run by or associated with Mafic Media, because according to CNN's report, quote, the pages pushing the videos do not disclose that they are backed by the Russian government. CNN told a tale of videos intended to undermine American democracy targeted to millennials on Facebook. However, as Kevin Gostola of Shadowproof and Alexander Rubenstein of Mint Press News subsequently disclosed, what CNN's article failed to report was that CNN misrepresented the facts. Fake news. Using its manufactured version of the story as a pretext for calling on Facebook to remove the pages used to share those videos. CNN's own report conceded that the panned pages appear to have fallen in a gray area for Facebook, although the pages sharing the videos, quote, do not include information about their links to the Russian government, CNN reported. Facebook pages were not previously required to do so.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting one. Again, we're reading from Project Censored. For those who might just be tuning in, you're listening to Freethinker Radio, or you're watching Freethinker Radio on the Conscious Resistance YouTube channel. We're reading the top 25 censored stories from Project Censored for 2018, 2019. If anybody wants to call in and share their thoughts, 713-526-8737. Meanwhile, we are reading the comments on YouTube as well and sharing those.
Anything good come through?
There's always conversation going on. We'll wait a little. I'm gonna get to jump into the next one, see if we can get it. We're moving into the last hour of the show now, guys. We've been into it for an hour, so thank you for tuning in. This one, number 3 on Project Censored's list, was written October 8th, 2019. Indigenous groups from Amazon propose creation of largest protected area on Earth. And I hadn't heard about this, so it's the reason it's on this list. Sweeping development through Amazon rainforest is an abiding concern for indigenous groups. The Amazon's extraordinary biodiversity is being destroyed for profits and political gain. In response, an alliance of some 500 indigenous groups from 9 countries, known as COICA, the coordinator of the indigenous organizations of the Amazon River Basin, is planning to safeguard a, quote, sacred corridor of life and culture covering more than 700,000 square miles, an area about the size of Mexico. That's pretty epic. The alliance presented its Bogota Declaration outlining the, quote, principles and joint vision of the indigenous confederations to protect the Amazon rainforest by using a traditional and holistic perspective at the 14th United Nations Biodiversity Conference held in Egypt in November 2018. A report for Common Dreams called the Amazon forest the world's last great sanctuary for biodiversity and said, quote, it is there because we are there. Other places have been destroyed. That was one of the indigenous leaders. And the alliance aims to protect biodiversity in the AAA corridor that spans the Andes Mountains, the Amazon, and the Atlantic Ocean. This region faces challenges from agribusiness, mining, and global climate crises, but members of the alliance also aim to address territorial rights. And as it was reported, they, quote, don't recognize modern national borders created by colonial settlers. We know the governments will try to go over our heads. This is nothing new to us. We have faced challenges for hundreds of years. And new right-wing leaders in Brazil and Colombia are threatening the indigenous leaders. And I would also add to that list Bolivia, where we recently, this should be on the list, if not, we'll add it towards the end, the recent quote-unquote uprising in Bolivia, which was actually, it seems, by all appearances, seems to fit the formula for U.S.-backed coup down there where Evo Morales had to run away. Not saying he's a perfect leader, or none of these people are anything like that, but it does seem that the people who have stepped into place have very much have an anti-indigenous mentality, and that there's already been massacres of innocent people in Bolivia going on. So this is kind of fitting that same course, that down there in Bolivia, in Brazil, and Colombia, there is a growing right-wing sentiment, is what it's being labeled, and some of it is definitely anti-indigenous. So the indigenous groups down there forming a coalition, 500 indigenous groups from 9 countries, calling for turning 700,000 square miles into a sacred corridor of life and culture. That is number 3 on Project Censored's top 25 censored stories of 2018-2019. Micah.
Number 4, U.S. oil and gas industry set to unleash 120 billion tons of new carbon emissions. The U.S. oil and gas industry has the potential to unleash the largest burst of new carbon emissions in the world through 2050, according to January 2019 report from Oil Change International, an organization that works to expose the true costs of fossil fuels and advocates for clean energy. Did y'all hear about that on the news out there? Oil Change International's coverage is based on a study, Drilling Towards Disaster, produced in a collaboration with the 350.org, Amazon Watch, the Center for Biological Diversity, Food and Water Watch, Greenpeace USA, and a dozen other organizations. According to the report, new U.S. oil and gas development could enable 120 billion tons of new carbon pollution, the equivalent to the lifetime CO2 emissions of nearly 1,000 coal-fired power plants. Between now and 2030, the United States is likely to account for 60% of the world's projected growth in oil and gas production, according to Kelly Trout, one of the report's co-authors. The findings present an urgent and existential emergency for lawmakers in the United States at all levels of government. Between now and 2030, the United States is likely to account for 60% of the world's projected growth in oil and gas production. We already said that. Sorry about that, guys. The Drilling Towards Disaster report highlights a 5-point agenda for what policymakers must do to check climate change, including, for example, banning new leases and permits for new fossil fuel exploration, production, and infrastructure, ending subsidies, the other public finance for the fossil fuel industry, and championing a Green New Deal to promote transition to 100% renewable energy. Wow, a lot of government in that paragraph, huh, Derrick? Yeah, I mean, really, I mean, is that the only thing? Is to like, what do we got right here? To ban new leases or permits? I mean, I don't know. To ban new fossil fuel exploration, production, and infrastructure. Ban new production of fossil fuels. Like, seriously? Like, when? Like, right now?
Well, so let's pause there for that idea there, because when we get into the whole environmental movement, I did a video a few weeks ago called "Towards a Decentralized Environmentalist Movement," and basically trying to make the point that one could care about the environment and want to stop deforestation or different things like that without necessarily being one of these people who are calling for centralized global government and a global tax system and
Green New Deal.
Green New Deal type of system, right? But there are folks who, they hear that Green New Deal, and so they're like, oh, they reject anytime they hear the word sustainability or environmental. They're just like, oh, this is those left-wing fascists and blah, blah, blah.
I think that
they throw everything out.
But what about the Teslas? I mean, isn't that just a viable a solution? They're on the road all over the place. You see what I mean?
But Tesla's getting tax breaks anyway, so I mean, it's not really.
But I mean, as far as
all of it's anti-market activity, everything that's going on, like you're saying, well, what I was going to ask though is like
we all need tax breaks.
The ban thing, right? So the more and more I've considered the environmental, especially through the campaign, again, most of the people that I deal with throughout the campaign, and I'd say everywhere, they talk about climate change and global warming, and specifically man-made, climate change, carbon emissions, and greenhouse gases and things
air
of that
conditioning.
sort. Things of that sort, right? So that's like where they're at, and I get that. And again, I can have a conversation with those folks, even if I'm skeptical towards some of that science, and still talk about the environment. They hear me talk about the environment, permaculture, community gardens, wanting to clean up the planet and help people, do all these great things. And so they make the assumption that I must believe those other ideas, even if that's not necessarily the case, or even if I have skepticism. My point here is Do you think though, Micah? Because basically, what groups like Extinction Rebellion and some of these other more radical groups are saying that look, we have to stop all carbon emissions by 2025. They're the most extreme ones. They think in the next 5 years. Then there's others say 2050. Like that's where they're headed. So the government-run kind of environmentalist movement, or that they want to eventually stop people from driving. I mean, that's definitely going to be a part of their agenda, part of their plan, because they have put this idea into people's heads that if they don't do that or anything less than that, we'll end up with violence and chaos and destruction of the world. So my question, I guess, is that let's assume that there was truth to that. And I know a lot of people do think that that's the truth. But let's assume that we knew, like, here's something that was incontrovertible, where we felt like, oh my God, this action.
Yeah, we knock over this domino.
Yeah, like it's really going to do this.
Yeah.
Then would it be, quote unquote, okay, moral, etc., to ban something? Because, like, I wonder where, like, is our extreme and I say our kind of generally, anti-regulatory mentality, is it a hindrance? Like, in some cases, like, does there, like, for example, we know that glyphosate is poisoning people. We know that, that it's a bad thing, and I'm sure they're spraying it all around the gardens, all around Houston, all around this area, and somebody's going to end up getting that downwind, getting the soil, yada yada. So there's an argument made of like that should be banned. We know it causes cancer. We got clear evidence, this and that. I don't know. This is a question I ask myself, so I guess I'm posing it to you and to the audience, because look, I'm not one for state action generally, but I do think even if people were confronted with information that said you do this and you will lead to the destruction of yourself, your life, your family,
they'll still do it.
That they would still do it. Yeah. Exactly. People would still do it. So not to say that a ban would necessarily stop it. I know it would just create a black market for cheeseburgers or whatever else they're telling us we can't do. You're gonna have a black market for cars and people who like want to have that experience of starting a car, or who the heck knows, right? But like, where is there a line? You know what I mean? Because I do think even without government, this is what justifies in some people's minds the idea of government, because they're like, well, people aren't conscious enough to do it on their own. Exactly. Yeah, they say that we can't self-regulate, so we have to have government doing that.
Isn't this the same thing as, you can't trust humans, so we got to put humans in
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I'm saying. Like, there's not a perfect answer, but I do think there's truth to the fact that even when confronted with difficult information and information about like their very existence, that like I'm an individual who's done this. I've been addicted to drugs and things in the past where I'm like very aware I'm taking a destructive action, but it didn't necessarily stop me from taking it.
No.
And, so on the larger scale of humanity, I guess my point is that, look, you can care about the planet, you can take steps to work with the planet and do all these great things that are important, learn about permaculture, community gardens, urban farming, localizing food production so that people don't have to be dependent on the big factory farming system and all the problems that it does come with. Because even if you don't believe carbon's bad, it still leads to lots of pollution. You go to anywhere where there's big factory farms and they got whole areas just filled with animal poop and cow poop, and nothing can even live or exist anywhere around it. So there's problems with the current systems we have. So I think that's important to recognize, but also like for each of us to kind of internalize and ask like, all right, well, are my habits destructive, and what would it take for me to change, and destructive to the environment or whatever.
And if you want to ban stuff, I want you to ban everything that's bad.
Ban all the things.
Just ban it. Like, you got too much sugar, don't eat it ever. You using too much power, you don't like the way the electricity's fueled, don't turn the light switch on.
So somebody in the chat made the point, they said Tesla actually emits more pollution manufacturing the vehicles than does a normal gas car just staying on the road. And
that's a good point, because I also thought about this with terms of replacing cars. Cuba just does aftermarket parts, and they're driving American cars from the 40s and 50s, 30s and earlier, right? I've wondered about that with just the how we have so many disposable cars now.
Well, yeah, and then the other thing, back to the number 3 or whatever story I was doing a moment ago about the Amazon and the rainforest. Well, some of those indigenous communities, I guarantee you, one of the things that they're trying to protect themselves from is mining, the mining is probably for lithium mines. Because lithium goes to our laptops, our smartphones.
Getting a lot of it from
definitely goes to Tesla, and so there's
KPFT.
I guarantee you those stories are kind of interrelated. That we have.
I guess in the background, going to bring
indigenous folks fighting against mining and destruction of their homelands and their resources, while we're out here using those same resources. We got a caller on the line. Who do we got with us? Oh, what's up, man? We have an MOD on the line. How's it going, brother?
Get into it.
Go for it.
Okay, well, have you ever heard of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, EBRD?
I'm not sure.
They're from the United Nations, and they're like, they give loans out to primarily like Euro-Asia countries.
Gotcha.
And they're going into like Ukraine, Jordan, Sudan, all the stands, Kyrgyzstans, whatever. And these countries that are like, either, once terrorist states or part of Donald Trump's, 13 or whatever Arab nations that are on the terror list, they're getting, funding and development for green initiatives and investments in young women's businesses. It's just look it up. I get the emails, and I get like half a dozen a day, and I see where all these hundreds of millions and tens of millions of dollars are going across Euro-Asia for this sustainable development initiative. That makes sense. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, and then so that's going on right now, and that's part, I think, part of a bigger narrative to what you were alluding to earlier about the 2030 or 2050 woos me, here comes the greens, whatever. It's pretty big, it's already started, and when you see terrorist states that we label terrorist states getting funding from the United Nations for all these smart initiatives, developments, and I mean, it goes against what we hear on the news over here, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we're with you.
And so, do you know who Elon Musk's grandfather was? The Tesla guy you mentioned.
Elon Musk.
Yeah, you know who his grandfather was?
Doesn't matter.
I feel like I've researched this before, but go ahead and tell us.
It doesn't matter. He was one of the founders of Technocracy out of Canada that came down to Columbia University, and basically they formed what was known as Technocracy out of that school. It was an academia in 1932. There were over 500,000 car-holding members.
Wait, you said Elon Musk's grandfather was part of Technocracy?
Grandfather was one of the founders.
What was his name?
Elon Musk's, let's see, Utopia. I got it right here, the article.
Oh, cool.
Let's get his name here. British ideas. Let's see. Tesla's value.
Come on, you gotta have your research ready, man. All right. Well, you can let me know about that later, but just go on and make your point, because it's interesting you bring this up, because I'm actually working on a book right now called How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State. So I've spent the afternoon reading and researching about the technocracy. So I was curious what his name was.
So there's different iterations. I mean, we heard it some time ago. So this is an adaptation, and of course, Z-Big's Tale Between Two Ages. In 1972, that was his interim to get him picked up by Rockefeller.
Didn't he call it? Brzezinski called it like a technotronic or something like that, right?
That's right. The technotronic order, very good. And it didn't really pick up until '92, until Poppy, Bush, and guy from Russia, Gorbachev, I think it was. Yeah, they had this thing, a summit, an Earth Summit. In '92, I think it was in Brazil, and that's when they introduced Agenda 21. And so what happened between then and the turn of the century, Derrick, was this place called the Club of Rome. They create this thing called the Sunshine Movement, and the Sunshine Movement is Greta? What's her name? Greta
Thunberg.
Yeah. So from this narrative that was resuscitated by Z-Big in '72, it was presented in '92 by Gorbachev and Bush, President 41, and Brazil in the Earth Summit in 1992. And then the Club of Rome created this book, and that's the premise. That's the Bible for the Sunshine Movement, which is the kids they're gonna use for this next effort. And the 2030 is sort of like you'll see de Blasio in New York saying we're going to be green by 2030, right? There several these people you mentioned earlier that are jumping on the board, and this is just a bigger narrative, right? With opportunity zones and data, so the technocratic order is what you're alluding to. But can I give you one thing on Bolivia, if you don't mind?
Yeah, one more thing, and then we're gonna have to go from here, brother.
I appreciate letting me share that with you, man. So this lady that was a coup. It was a military coup, wasn't it, in Bolivia?
Yep.
What's her name? Inez?
I can't recall.
So this individual was propped up to be, I guess, the new leader, interim, and they removed Evo Morales's business associations with these other countries down there in the Americas, and they're going to privatization. And so, they privatized the water. You remember that the water war they had down there?
Oh yeah, it's been going down in Ecuador and Bolivia for a while.
Yeah, they took the water, the source of life. You can't have rainwater. What I'm trying to say is that kind of policy is what we're seeing across the world. And as they come in, they privatize everything. This is like a prim and proper, I think, for this technocratic era. But if you get a chance, just look at, read. I read half of The Tale Between Two Ages, and it's a completely a flood plan for 2030. And then I'll leave you with this. Then, so look at what the Pope, Francis, the first Pope to open a United Nations event in New York in 2015. He read Derrick 11 principles that were like utopia. He opened first Pope ever opened the UN Summit in New York, and you read these 11 principles, and the first 7, Derrick, were like utopias. Every child should have medicine and clean water or whatever, right? And the last 4, I think, were like mandates. You will agree to live in, state-sponsored housing and water rationing, I think if you look at 2030, you'll see it's like 2.8 gallons a day. So this Green New Deal, if you see AOC, all she's doing is she's taking the bathwater that no one would touch before the last November 2008 election. No one.
We're gonna have to leave it there right now, brother. But we appreciate your phone call, always, MOD. And yeah, thank you to everybody who's listening in. You're listening to Freethinker Radio. MOD always has a lot to share and some important things that, like we were just getting into, the technocracy is definitely an important concept that I think is really playing into the world we've seen around us. Right now, we've been reading the stories from Project Censored, top 25 censored stories of 2018-2019. We're live on KPFT.org on the HD2 dial. And we're going to go to a song now to take a break, and we will be right back. So please stay tuned. Freethinker Radio, 90.1 KPFT. Hey guys, the battery on my phone's dying, so we're gonna have to end this. But thanks for tuning in. And if you want to listen. Go. I think I put the link in there.
40 more minutes.
We're going to be on the air for 40 more minutes till the top of the hour. So kpft.org/listen. If you guys want to, keep listening.
And we'll be on FM Friday.
We're going to play this song for a couple more minutes, and then I'm going to wrap it up. And then you can go to kpft.org/listen, and I'll put the link in there one more time. All right, guys. And we'll be live again on Friday. So stay tuned. Peace.